This is the fourth and final video in my natural childbirth story. Yay! Thanks for sticking with us so long here. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 4 tips that I think made this birth so much easier than my first. Now, before I dive into those tips, let me just put a disclaimer out there. We could do everything perfectly and under the sun to prepare for a wonderful natural childbirth, and we can still have a really hard birth. That was my experience with my first. I did Bradley natural birthing classes, I did squats, I did special exercises, I ate perfectly, and you know what? My birth was hard. 27 hours, 2-degree tear. I needed 2 drops of Pitocin even to push my son out. It was brutal. And I actually had to go through a grieving process because it was not the birth that I wanted. So the greatest gift that we can give ourselves is to accept the birth that we are given. I know some moms that wanted a natural childbirth so much and they ended up having emergency C-sections. And thank God they did, because their lives or their baby's lives were in danger. I know other moms that had successful VBACs or water births or home births. So the important thing for us is to work with the labor that we're given, to accept it with grace, and to do as best as we can. Having said all that, I do think there were 4 factors that made this birth a lot easier than my first time around. Starting with number 1, this was my second birth. Yes, it's true. Second-time births go a lot faster, usually, than the first. And if you think about it, it's because we already had a baby basically be the trailblazer, so our body knows what to do. I could tell even when I was pregnant that this birth was going to go faster from the way she rested in my body and the way my Braxton Hicks were happening and that sort of thing. In fact, when I talked to lots of other moms, most of them said that their second births were about half the time of their first. So I was kind of prepping myself for a 12-hour, 14-hour labor, and little did I know that it'd be a lot faster than that. The second factor that I think helped was body prep. Now, I started seeing a chiropractor who specialized in the Webster technique about 2 months before I gave birth. Now, some mamas get extra credit because they start the minute they find out they're pregnant, and I think that's awesome. I didn't do it that way, but either way, I think it helped a ton. I would go in once or twice a week. He would, align my pelvis, get me in a really good place so that birth would be easier. Now, it's interesting to note with my first pregnancy, I saw the same chiropractor, but I only gave myself 4 weeks before my due date. And I was working full-time, sitting a lot of the day, and so my pelvis would always get out of alignment just because we're not meant to be sitting that much. But the second time around, since I'm chasing a 3-year-old toddler and I'm a lot more active, my pelvis was a lot more stable. I also did a lot of exercises outside of his office to keep myself in good balance. Now, I did a whole separate video about that, about exercises that you can do to get your baby in optimal position for birth. So be sure to check that out. There'll be a link in the video description below. But another great resource is checking out spinningbabies.com, where she talks all about getting our bodies in good condition for birth. The third factor was I drank red raspberry leaf tea consistently. Now, I did a lot of things in terms of diet and supplements and stuff during this pregnancy, but the one thing I was the most consistent with was drinking that tea. From my second trimester on, I had it almost every single day. And what I did is I would just brew up a double batch, so like 16 ounces. So I'd have 2 cups a day. I would sip it all afternoon. And I am telling you, it made such a difference. What red raspberry leaf tea does is it tones our uterine muscle and the whole pelvic wall area. And boy, could I feel that. When I was giving birth and in labor, my contractions were so deep and effective and yet not really that painful. It was awesome. Now, compared to my first birth, they were really erratic and they were kind of hyper and they weren't really that strong. So I definitely recommend the red raspberry leaf tea. In fact, 2 days before I gave birth, I made a huge batch of this double strength red raspberry leaf tea. I got the loose tea, I brewed it up, and it was very, very strong. So I drank a quart of it the day before I gave birth and a quart on the morning I gave birth. I had no idea I was going into labor, and wow, I think it really supercharged my delivery. The fourth and final factor that I think made all the difference was prayer. Now, don't get me wrong, when I was pregnant with Griffin, we prayed a ton too, but with this birth, we just took it up a notch. And I started filling my mind with positive thoughts around birth. And the book that helped me the most around that was called Supernatural Childbirth. Now, I know some people that use hypnobirthing or hypnobabies to basically do the same thing, but it was just about reframing that, hey, I could actually have a birth that was enjoyable, that was quick, and that didn't have to be hard and painful. And it really helped to do that, to start thinking differently. I also, during labor, listened to this MP3 called Childbirth and the Glory. I am telling you, this was my favorite tool out of anything I used, because I essentially labored most of the time alone. Mike was either sleeping or he was out getting food. When I got to the hospital, my doula was only with me for about 10 minutes. So it was just me and my little MP3 player, listening to this music. And it just helped me a ton. I felt so much with and connected to God, and that power got me through. I also had a lot of you praying for me, so thank you so much for that. And let's not forget those 600 praying nuns. I'm telling you, once my mom gave me that call and told me that they were praying, I felt like this huge shift. In fact, when I was in the car in the hospital, I'm like, gosh, these nuns have power. So there you have it, the 4 factors I think really helped me have a faster and easier and actually enjoyable childbirth. But would love to hear from you. I know a lot of mamas out there have had some great birth stories. Share with us any tips or tricks that you did that helped you along. Leave it in the comments below. And thanks as always for tuning in.